I can't tell if I'm happy or not about that game. I thought actually it was a really tactically interesting game, and we're going to take a little bit more of a look at that in just a minute. But in terms of Premier League quality, I actually thought we saw quite a high standard of football, and two teams, one that liked to control with the ball and one that liked to control the game without the ball, come together, and ultimately it was the one that liked to control the game without the ball in Liverpool that ended up winning. I thought Arne Slot set his team up very solidly, and I think Enzo Maresca set his team up in a way that could have beaten Liverpool and arguably should have beaten Liverpool in what would have been a really big win for them as well. But obviously they did lose. There's talking points that we'll discuss, but overall really enjoyed that. Not as heartbroken as I thought I was going to be, but let's take a deeper look into how Liverpool beat Chelsea. And I'm actually going to start with how Chelsea played when they had the ball. So this is how both teams lined up. We knew that there was going to be a couple of changes in the Chelsea lineup. A few suspensions meant that we had to change. Obviously Fofana couldn't play, so Tosin came in. Cucurella was suspended as well, so Gusto, for some reason, was the one that ended up playing left back in a rather interesting position as well. Reece James and Romeo Lavia came back, which was surprising, I think. We expected to see them on the bench, didn't expect them to start, especially as we knew we weren't going to get a full 90 minutes out of them as well. I was quite interested to understand why we went with that. But in terms of the system, it was really interesting. And let's take a look why. So we know, obviously, Liverpool, very compact, they're good at defending. They actually defend in this 4-4-2 shape, or more like a 4-2-4. Let's pull it forward a little bit. They kind of sat in a mid-block 4-2-4. And it was effective. It kind of narrowed the pitch down a little bit for Chelsea, meant that there was limited areas to play through. The one thing you can see immediately is this is where the gaps are, and this is actually where Chelsea did try and attack as well. Chelsea, as expected, played in their 3-2-5 in position, but what we're used to seeing is normally one of the the fullbacks inverts into the midfield, and then the midfielder pushes high. The issue with starting Lavia and Caicedo as the double pivot was that neither of them are really good going forward, which is what Enzo Fernandez has been doing, and I don't think Enzo Fernandez has been brilliant at it either. But Lavia or Caicedo you'd expect to go forward, but we didn't do that. So Sancho obviously kept the width on the left, Madueke on the right, Palmer came into the half space in the right hand side that we kind of expected, nothing really surprising there. And it was actually Gusto inverting into a half space. Instead of coming round, Lavia going up, Gusto just went straight there himself. He was playing as the left number 10, which was really surprising for me. And then Colwill came across, Lavia, Caicedo as the double pivot, Tosin, James, and Colwill was the back three, and Sanchez kind of more advanced to almost make it a back four, almost trying to make it a 4-2-5 using Sanchez as the extra man. I have my opinions on Sanchez, they're not very strong, but anyway, you can tell from Gusto's pass map actually that he was much more advanced. He played quite a high and maybe more central than you'd expect. He actually was picking up these kind of spaces, maybe a little bit deeper than what Palmer was, but we know, and I haven't discussed this enough actually in Chelsea tactic videos, but normally Chelsea actually create more of a 3-3-4 than a 3-2-5, because one of the midfielders in Gusto or Palmer will drop deeper to get onto the ball. If we give the centre-backs the ball, say for Colwill, Gusto actually typically would drop a little bit deeper while Palmer stays high, and vice versa. Palmer sometimes would drop deeper to receive drilled passes into the midfield to kind of break the lines. Chelsea have been doing that a lot this season with Nkunku, with Palmer, with Enzo. It's been a common theme of theirs. And they did it somewhat as well today. But Gusto was the left half space attacker. Thought that was really interesting. And the way that Liverpool set up was they pretty much had numerical advantages in the areas they wanted to, which made sense. Jota and Szoboszlai would block off the passes into Lavia and Caicedo. So if the centre-backs had the ball, for example, Tosin can't find a pass into Lavia or Caicedo easily because they're being blocked off by Jota and Szoboszlai. Similarly, Jones and Gravenberch tried to block off the passes into Gusto and Palmer. That was more their job. And actually, Salah and Gakpo were quite narrow. I thought that was interesting. Normally in this situation, say Tosin has the ball again, the wingers are the ones that push the wide fullbacks. They're the ones that apply pressure, forcing Tosin to go long, maybe into likes of Jackson. But they didn't. They were really passive and just sat in this position, very narrow, especially when Jackson did drop a little bit deeper or when Palmer did come central. Sometimes one of the centre-backs had to drop out. Gakpo just provided that extra little bit of security in that the passes into Palmer weren't really an option, and similarly on the other side, if Gravenberch for any reason had to come a bit central, Salah made sure the passes into Gusto weren't on. That was their role more so throughout the game, which I wasn't really expecting, but it's how it worked, and that's that. I thought it was really impressive and a little bit passive from Liverpool, but I kind of understand why they've done it. They wanted to make sure that Palmer didn't get a lot of time, and they've kind of managed that effectively. Palmer still had 47 touches, and he did have a few good chances, but when you compare to the impact Palmer has been having on matches, he was actually quite out of the game. And I think Liverpool knew they had the individual quality to catch Chelsea out on the break, to use their attackers effectively and take their chances, and that is pretty much what they did. They attacked Chelsea when there was a gap in the defence, when the time was right. They didn't sit high with the ball. They weren't knocking it around Chelsea's box constantly. They were pretty counter-attacking, but we know they are so good at it. And they were happy to let Chelsea have possession, and Chelsea wanted possession so that they could control the game. The issue is Liverpool are just a team that thrive in a chaotic game. When the ball's kind of bouncing around more basketball-esque, where it's going backwards and forwards constantly, Liverpool thrive off of that. And Chelsea kind of knew that, so they wanted to limit it by having the ball most of the time. They weren't bad with it either. I do think Chelsea had some good transitional moments. Liverpool knew Chelsea would have some good transitional moments, and they set up in a way that kind of limited that, and it worked. One other major aspect was the use of the wide players. Madueke and Sancho got the ball quite often isolated out on these wings against Trent and Robertson, and I think there was a heavy emphasis on the ball going maybe through to Caicedo, who would then knock it into Madueke, or play a switch out for Sancho. We did try and get isolations on the wings with Madueke and Sancho so that they can try and beat their man, get forward, and maybe get a cross in, get a shot away, something like that. The issue with this was when we got the ball out wide, especially Sancho, he struggled to beat his man, and coming central was actually really difficult, and I'll explain to you why. If you see in this area of the pitch, Liverpool have 6 players, Chelsea only have 5. Liverpool always had the numerical advantage because Chelsea's numerical advantage was a centre-back. He's no use when you're going forward. And that really prevented Chelsea from using the middle of the pitch. Liverpool were always the first to it. However, we'll get to it in a minute. The goal actually did come from a situation like this, but Liverpool did it really well. They blocked off the central areas. Gravenberch did a really good job of marking Gusto, who I actually think had a really good game as well, especially in this position, which is a weird position for him to be in. He did have a good game, but Gravenberch kind of nullified Gusto's impact. So Chelsea played pretty slow, didn't play through the thirds really fast, and obviously we saw Sancho come off at half-time for Neto, which I think was very much needed. He created a little bit more chaos in the Liverpool defence. He was running all over the place. He was beating Trent as well. He was coming a little bit more central at times, and it worked. It did make a positive impact. Obviously, it just wasn't enough in the end. But when we take a look at the Chelsea goal, we can see it's actually very similar to a goal we saw against West Ham recently as well. Caicedo carries the ball right up to the opposition's defensive line, plays a really clever pass centrally, splits the defenders for Jackson to run onto, and Jackson timed his run perfectly, obviously got his shot away. I thought he'd missed. Thank God. He didn't. He actually scored. And there's me celebrating, thinking that Chelsea might go and win this game. But that was the only real threatening moment that Chelsea had centrally. The only other way that Chelsea really could construct their attacks was through the 10s and through the wide players by kind of trying to put crosses in these areas. Let's get everyone a bit higher. In these areas, Palmer would try and put a cross in, like an in-swinging cross. As would Neto quite often on this left-hand side, try and put crosses in. But Konate and Van Dijk, their aerial presence is just too strong. Jackson's not winning the header. they dominated their box, and they needed that today. Liverpool have only conceded 2 goals before this game. We couldn't really expect that to be a plausible way of scoring goals, so I'm surprised we used it so much. We've looked really good by using our wide players this season, but I don't think Liverpool was the right time to do that. I think we had to attack them central areas a bit more, had to create overloads in them positions on the pitch, and really utilise that space between the double pivot in zone 14. Unfortunately, Chelsea didn't do that. But out of possession, they actually also looked pretty good. So let's take a look at how they lined up when Liverpool had the ball instead. When Liverpool were playing out from the back, they stuck with their 4-2-3-1 formation, or you could call it a 4-2-4 again, something similar to what we see on screen at the moment. And when Kelleher was trying to play out from the back, Chelsea actually went man for man, and you can see that here. Every Liverpool player has, bar Szoboszlai kind of, has a Chelsea player attached to them. Madueke for Robertson, Palmer was blocking off Van Dijk, and they tried to prevent Liverpool from building their attacks effectively. And I didn't actually hate it. I thought they actually did a pretty good job of preventing Liverpool having their easy passes, their easy route to transition. And before the game, I think Gravenberch was a real highlight. Gravenberch has been sensational for Liverpool this season. One of their best players, arguably if not their best player, because he's just enabled so much for them. His ability to take the ball from the defensive areas into the attack has been perfect. It's been so good, which is surprising because obviously when Slot came in, we weren't exactly sure who's going to be in that double pivot. I suggested Gravenberch and McAllister, and actually I'm very proud of myself for that because Gravenberch has looked brilliant. The main route that they wanted to try and get is Gravenberch on the ball to then turn and get away from Lavia. And when I say Lavia in this position, I'm not just saying he's in this position because he's the left of a midfield too. He was genuinely man-marking Gravenberch the entire game. Even when Gravenberch came really deep, like this position, Lavia followed him. He was always on him, and that's because they didn't want Gravenberch to turn Lavia, take him out of the game, and then go forward. And unfortunately, a couple times, it did happen, where the pass maybe came into Konate. He managed to fire a pass into Gravenberch, who then took it around on the half-turn, and obviously then carried the ball forward. And it was actually a really impressive way of them getting on the ball. It's all about the little fine margins. In these positions, obviously Lavia is not going to go this side of Gravenberch, because then you can maybe play a ball over... Oh, everything's gone. You can maybe play a ball over the top for Gravenberch or Szoboszlai to knock down into Gravenberch, and that's not going to work. So Lavia has to be this side of Gravenberch. But the moment Gravenberch made a run like that, a very short, quick sprint, by the time this pass has been played, Lavia's only just locked onto it, and already Gravenberch has gone around him. That was do you know what? I think Lavia was really good this game. I thought he was absolutely impressive, considering he's not been in the team recently. Coming back from injury, his press resistance is sensational. His ability to read the game and carry the ball forward is actually so much better for someone of his age than you'd expect. But it was just these couple of moments where he wasn't exactly as sharp as maybe he should have been. It's a difficult situation. The moment Gravenberch makes that run, you kind of know what's about to happen, but Gravenberch did get the better of Lavia a couple of times. Now, despite Liverpool looking scary in these moments, the first goal, the penalty, didn't actually come from this. It came from Konate playing a long ball forward. Obviously, it went into Jota, who headed it back for Curtis Jones to then take and carry forward, and Liverpool had a 4 versus 4, and I actually think Chelsea defended it pretty well. It was just a costly mistake that obviously ended up then giving away the penalty. Colwill, with a rash tackle on Salah in the box, it was a penalty. I'm not going to deny that. It was unfortunate because I think actually they recovered pretty well, but it was a rash moment and it was a penalty, and obviously Salah, as you'd expect, tucked it away. My one question is though, if that was a foul, was the Trent foul on Sancho not also a penalty? I don't know if this is me being biased. I don't think that the Colwill foul is any worse. So I don't understand how you can then say that they're different. Does that make sense? I think Chelsea deserved to get a penalty for that situation. And it's unfortunate they didn't. Obviously VAR checked it, weren't that fussed. So fair enough, game continues. Now, one really key aspect of this game was actually the positioning of Curtis Jones. Now, we've just said Chelsea obviously defended in a bit of a 4-4-2 with Lavia man marking Gravenberch. The position of Jones was really interesting. He would, when Szoboszlai went a little bit higher, or maybe Gravenberch dropped a little bit deeper, they created almost a 3-1-3-3 shape. Pretty interesting shape. It wasn't exactly always like this either. Liverpool were so fluid, they just kept their players moving, so it was hard for Chelsea to really understand who they're picking up. And one massive aspect of this was Curtis Jones. Curtis Jones would quite often find himself, when Liverpool did go into this back three, Jones would find himself in a little pocket of space on this left-hand side. The issue with this then is, if Caicedo jumps to man mark Jones, look at all this space in the middle of the pitch that Chelsea haven't got covered. So they couldn't do this, so Caicedo had to stay central. But then just look at all the space over here that Curtis Jones has to carry with the ball. He was brilliant today, by the way, Curtis Jones. Absolutely sensational. If he came wide and Caicedo didn't follow him, he had time and space with the ball. And if Caicedo did follow him, the ball could be recycled quickly because there was a broken gap in between Chelsea's press, and it meant there was areas of the pitch they just didn't have locked off, which would have caused a threat for Liverpool again as well. So that's the one aspect of Chelsea's game where I think there was a little bit of confusion that ultimately did cost them, because it was Jones that wasn't getting marked that ended up scoring that second goal. The ball came out wide, Mohamed Salah with a sensational pass in. Reece James, you can tell, is trying to cover the run of Cody Gakpo. That's fine, I have no problem with that. Tosin's ball watching a little bit. Caicedo doesn't track his man, and as great as I think Caicedo was today, he actually was sensational as well. He didn't do his job in this moment, and it cost them. They tried to claim for offside, it was very much not offside. Jones made a brilliant run from deep in behind the gaps between Caicedo and Reece James. Could Sanchez have got the ball? I have my own opinions on Sanchez. I don't think he's a good goalkeeper. I understand he fits the way Maresca wants them to play, but I just think in terms of the basics, yes, he saved them against Nottingham Forest last time out, I guess, 2 weeks ago, with a good save. He just makes too many mistakes. And for all that money Chelsea have spent, to not have improved the goalkeeper, for me, is a massive mistake. I think he should be coming out and claiming that ball, or at least trying to be more aggressive. If you're going to concede, at least make it look like you've tried to come and claim that cross. Either way, he didn't, and that's how we ended up in the situation where Jones has an easy tap in. He made it look really, really nice as well. It was a really good movement, and Chelsea are 2-1 down, and by that point, I think it's game over. The substitutes I don't think helped either. We knew Reece James and Lavia weren't going to play a whole 90 minutes. Obviously, they came off in the 50th minute. Renato Vega, I thought, was interesting. He initially started doing that gusto role, where he would still come into the half space. I don't think it was working too well, and obviously Enzo Fernandez was on the pitch as well, so instead they started moving Vega into the midfield and Enzo Fernandez pushed high again. Again, I don't really think it added anything. The one change that really killed the game off for me was when they moved Neto out to the right and Christopher Nkunku came on in that left wing position. For me, in that situation, Madueke should have stayed on the pitch actually, and it should have been Jackson that came off, but the fact that if you wanted to take Madueke off Nkunku, I think because Palmer's not really had a great influence on the game, maybe you move him out to the right hand side, drop Nkunku into that right half space and keep everything else the same. I think that would have been more effective. I don't think Nkunku offered much out on that left, didn't really have much pace to beat Trent, didn't really cut inside and create anything, and ultimately the game just died off. It was a good game, tactically, really enjoyed it. Did Liverpool deserve the win? Maybe, maybe not. I think a draw would have been a fair result personally. Chelsea had 57% possession, but they only had 2 shots on target and they only registered 0.93 XG. If you're dominating the ball like you did again in Anfield, you have to take your chances a little bit better than that. You have to make most of the attacks that you do get and you have to construct them well. And when Chelsea did construct them well, other than that Jackson goal, I think they struggled in front of goal. And that's where it cost them. Liverpool, on the other hand, on the transition, on the counter, their quality as well. I mean, Curtis Jones, unreal game. They just had enough. And I actually am really impressed with Enzo Maresca's input on this team. I think we look much better than we did under Pochettino. I think we looked much better in general. The structure, every player seems to know what their role is a little bit better. The fluidity, our possession, our ability to control the tempo, control the game was much better. And I do think Enzo Maresca has done a pretty good job with this squad, and I only think they're going to get better. maybe not this season. Next season, I really see Chelsea pushing. It reminds me of when Antonio Conte took charge at Chelsea. It reminds me of his first season, and I'm hoping, for my sake, that that's correct as well. Either way though, I'm probably going to end the video there. I'm starting to lose my voice. I am ill at the moment. International break has not served me well. I think I'm allergic to international breaks. That must be the reason. Talking of international breaks though, Thomas Tuchel has been appointed new England manager. If you want to see how England could set up under Thomas Tuchel, go and check this video out. You might enjoy it. You also might disagree with me. But that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know down in the comments below, was it a foul on Sancho or not? Did Liverpool deserve to win or not? But until then, until next time, I'll see you very soon. Probably with a Champions League video. Who doesn't love a Champions League video? But yes, I'll see you very soon. Thanks for watching.